cranberry sauce came out of a can. I noticed that first, before anything else, because for 32 years, I had made it from scratch every November. And now, there it sat in a crystal bowl that used to be my mother's, ridged from the can, glistening under the dining room light like something nobody had bothered to dress up. My name is Henrietta. I am 67 years old, and I worked for 41 years as a senior paralegal at a probate and estate planning firm in Sacramento. I retired 3 years ago with a pension, a paid-off house in Roseville, and what my late husband used to call a healthy disrespect for paperwork that doesn't sit right. I tell you that now because it matters later. It matters more than I knew that Thursday evening when I walked into my own daughter's house in Folsom, California, carrying a sweet potato pie I had baked at 5 in the morning and found a Thanksgiving dinner already in progress without me. My daughter, I'll call her my daughter throughout this, because by the end of this story you'll understand why I'm not eager to use her name even in my own mouth, had told me dinner was at 4. I arrived at 3:45. The driveway was full. My son-in-law's truck, his brother's SUV, my daughter's lease, and 2 other cars I didn't recognize. I had to park on the street. That should have been my first clue. The second was the smell coming through the front door when I knocked. Turkey, yes, but also that particular smell of food that has been sitting out for a while, gone slightly tired around the edges. My granddaughter opened the door. She's 11. She hugged me hard around the middle, the way she's done since she was 3, and she said, "Grandma, you're here." She said it like she was relieved, like she had been waiting. I should have known then. "Sweetheart," I said, "where's your mama?" "Everyone already ate," she said. She said it quietly, almost like she was warning me. "Mom said to start without you because you were running late." I checked my watch. 3:46. I was 15 minutes early. The dining room, my dining room, in the sense that the table in it was the one my husband Howard and I had bought in 1987 from a furniture store in Stockton, and which I had given to my daughter when she bought the Folsom house because she said she wanted real wood that meant something. That table was strewn with plates, half-eaten plates, wine glasses with lipstick on the rims, a pumpkin pie with a wedge already cut out of it, my daughter at the head of the table, my son-in-law to her right, his brother and that brother's wife, 2 people I had never met before in my life, and a college-age boy I assumed was somebody's nephew. 7 adults, 7 plates, not one of them set for me. My daughter looked up. She had that smile she gets when she's about to say something that she's already decided isn't her fault. "Mom, hi." "Oh, we got started. Travis's brother had to get on the road by 6, so we figured." I stood there holding the pie. The pie was still warm under my palms. I could feel it through the foil. "It's 3:46, I said. "Right, well, we said 4-ish. The ish was new. The ish was a thing she had grown into in the last 2 years, ever since she and my son-in-law had moved into this house. A 5-bedroom in a gated subdivision they could not, by any honest accounting, afford. I knew what they made because she had asked me 2 years ago to co-sign the mortgage. I had said no. Then I had said yes. Then I had paid the down payment when their financing fell through because she cried on my couch in Roseville for an hour and a half and said the school district was the only good one for my granddaughter, and how could I let my own grandchild grow up in a bad school zone? And Howard had been gone 11 months by then, and I was lonely and tired, and I wrote the check. $48,000. That was the down payment, plus closing, plus 6 months later, when their HVAC went out, 11,000 more. Plus, last spring, when my son-in-law lost his sales job and they couldn't make the mortgage for 3 months, another 9,000. I'm not going to keep counting. I had counted, though. A paralegal counts. We can't help it. "There's food in the kitchen," my daughter said. "Help yourself." I walked to the kitchen. My granddaughter trailed behind me, holding the hem of my cardigan the way she used to when she was 4. The kitchen counter had the turkey on it, what was left of it, which was a carcass and some torn pieces of breast meat that had clearly been pulled at by hands. The mashed potatoes in their bowl had a crater scraped out of the middle. The green bean casserole had a serving spoon stuck in it at an angle, abandoned. The rolls, there were no rolls. The basket had crumbs in it. "There's a plate in the microwave for you," my granddaughter whispered. I opened the microwave. There was a paper plate. On it, a thin slice of turkey, the kind that comes from the very end of the breast where it's been cooked twice, a spoonful of stuffing, some green beans, and a smear of mashed potatoes. The whole thing was sitting in its own grease. The plate was cold. The microwave had not been turned on. Someone had put it in there to keep it warm, but had not actually started the appliance. I stood in that kitchen for a long moment. I'm not going to lie to you and say I didn't feel anything. I felt something. It moved up my throat the way grief does, slow and inevitable, and I pushed it down because crying in my daughter's kitchen on Thanksgiving was not going to be how I spent my afternoon. My granddaughter said, "I tried to save you some of the rolls, but Aunt Bethany took the last two." Aunt Bethany was my son-in-law's brother's wife, a woman I had now met for approximately 90 seconds. "That's all right, baby," I said. "Grandma's not very hungry." I set the sweet potato pie on the counter next to the picked-over turkey. I took the paper plate out of the microwave. I went into the dining room. There was no chair for me. The table seated 8 comfortably, and they were 7. But they had spread out their plates and their wine glasses and the gravy boat and the cranberry can sauce so that there was no opening, no place setting, nowhere to sit. My daughter saw me standing there holding the cold paper plate, and she said, without getting up, "Travis, scoot over." "Mom, you can squeeze in next to Travis." My son-in-law did not scoot over. He looked up from his phone and said, "I'm comfortable here. Mom can pull up that chair from the hall." The chair from the hall is a decorative chair. It is not for sitting in. It is for setting your purse on when you come in the front door. It has a needlepoint cushion my late mother-in-law made in 1979. I pulled it over. I sat on it. The seat was lower than the table, so my chest came up to the edge of my plate. I cut my piece of turkey. It was dry. Of course it was dry. I ate 3 bites of stuffing. The cranberry sauce was, as I said, from a can, the jelly kind, sliced into perfect cylinders with the ridges of the can still on them. And then my daughter said, while reaching for her wine glass, and I will remember this sentence until the day I am put in the ground, "Mom, while we have you here, we wanted to talk to you about something." My son-in-law's brother set his fork down. His wife set her wine glass down. Everybody at the table got that look. The look of people who had been rehearsing. "Travis and I have been talking," my daughter said, "and we think it might be time for us to start helping you manage some things. You know, just to take it off your plate." "Manage what things?" I said. "Just finances? The house, you know. You said yourself last month you got confused about the property tax bill." I had not gotten confused about the property tax bill. I had told her over the phone that I had set it up on auto pay through my bank and didn't want to talk about it anymore. She had decided in that moment, evidently, that I was sliding. "Honey," my son-in-law said. He calls me honey now. Started doing it about a year ago. "We want to make sure you're protected. There's a lot of fraud out there targeting seniors." The word seniors came out of his mouth like he was reading it off a brochure. "There's a guy," my daughter said. "An elder care attorney. He's a friend of Travis's brother. We had him put together some preliminary paperwork. Just to start the conversation. No pressure." She slid an envelope across the table. I looked at the envelope. It was a manila envelope, the legal size kind, with a clasp at the top. My fingers knew that envelope. I had pulled 1,000 envelopes exactly like it out of 1,000 client folders over 41 years. I knew, before I opened it, what was inside. I opened it anyway. I am, as I have said, a paralegal, and a paralegal does not refuse to read a document just because she suspects she won't like it. It was a durable power of attorney, springing, California form, naming my daughter as primary agent and my son-in-law as successor, granting authority over banking, real property, retirement accounts, tax filings, and, And this is the part where my fingers got cold around the page. The authority to make gifts of principal up to $50,000 per year per don. That last clause is not a standard clause. That last clause is a clause you add when you intend to move money out of the principal's estate to specific recipients while the principal is still alive. It is, in the trade, the clause we used to call the inheritance accelerator. It is not illegal. It is. If the principal is competent and consents, perfectly fine. If the principal is not competent or has not truly consented, it is the slow looting of a person's life. I closed the envelope. I set it on the table next to my paper plate. "Mom," my daughter said, "what do you think?" I looked at her. I looked at my son-in-law. I looked at the brother and the brother's wife and the college-age boy who I now realized was probably the attorney's paralegal, brought along to walk me through any questions I might have. It was a setup, down to the cold plate, down to the chair from the hall, down to the wine they had not poured me, down to the cranberry sauce from a can because nobody had bothered to make it the way I made it, because by the time the day was over, they had expected I would not be making it anymore. Not in this family. Not for this table. I did not say any of that. I did what I have done for 41 years when a document I do not like is placed in front of me. I smiled the small, professional smile. I said, "I'd like to take this home and read it more carefully." "Of course," my daughter said. She looked relieved. She had expected a fight. The absence of a fight, she read as agreement. "It's a lot to think about," my son-in-law said. "It's a lot to think about," I agreed. I ate 2 more bites of stuffing. I drank a glass of water. My granddaughter sat on the floor next to my needlepoint chair and leaned her head against my knee, and I put my hand in her hair. And I thought about the $48,000 for the down payment, and the 11 for the HVAC, and the 9 for the missed mortgage and the co-signed card my daughter had on my Capital One account for emergencies that she had used last month at a Nordstrom for $900 I had not been told about until the statement came. I thought about the 529 college plan I had been funding for my granddaughter, $400 a month for 8 years, that my daughter did not technically have access to, but had asked about 3 times in the last 6 months. I thought about my house, which was paid off and worth, last appraisal, $840,000. I thought about the life insurance Howard had left me. I thought about the IRA. I thought about the pension survivor benefit. I thought about every line item of the life I had built over 4 decades, and I thought about the fact that the people sitting at this table had sat down without me and eaten the warm food and left me the cold plate, and that this paper, this envelope, this springing durable POA with the gift of principal clause was not the beginning of something. This was the middle. They had been planning this for months. The brother had brought the lawyer. The lawyer had brought the paralegal. The dinner was the soft open. I should head home before dark, I said. My eyes aren't what they used to be on the freeway. Mom, stay for pie, my daughter said. I brought pie, I said. I picked up the envelope. I picked up my purse. I bit down and kissed my granddaughter on the top of her head, and I told her I loved her and that I would see her very soon. I left the sweet potato pie on the counter, untouched, because I did not want them to have it, but I also did not want to make a scene by taking it back. Some pettiness is beneath us, some is not. That pie, I left. I drove home to Roseville. It was about 25 minutes. I did not cry. I did not turn on the radio. I drove with both hands on the wheel, and I made a list in my head, the way I used to do at work when a client came in with a mess and I had to triage it before the attorney got out of his 10 o'clock. Item 1. Every account my daughter had any form of access to. Item 2. Every recurring transfer that benefited her or her household. Item 3. Every legal document on file that named her in any capacity. Item 4. My granddaughter. That last item was the hardest, because everything I was about to do was going to affect my granddaughter, and my granddaughter was the one person in that house who had not done a single thing wrong. She had whispered to me about the rolls. She had tried to save me bread. She was 11. I would have to find a way. I got home at 6:15. I made myself a real plate of food. I had a roasted chicken in the fridge and some leftover wild rice and the cranberry sauce I had made on Tuesday, the one with orange zest and a stick of cinnamon. I sat at my own table and I ate. Then I washed the dish. Then I went into Howard's old office, which I had kept exactly the way he left it, and I sat down at the desk and I opened the drawer where I kept the file folders. I worked until 2 in the morning. The first thing I did was call the after-hours fraud line at my bank and report the Capital One card my daughter had as an authorized user. I did not cancel my own card. I canceled hers. The young woman on the phone asked me if I wanted to file a fraud claim for prior unauthorized use. I said, no. I said I was simply removing an authorized user. She said it would be effective immediately. I thanked her. The second thing I did was log into my credit union and remove my daughter as the beneficiary on my checking and savings. I had named her as a payable on death beneficiary in 2009. I changed it to a trust I had not yet created, but would create on Monday morning. The credit union let me enter a placeholder. I entered the Henrietta May Family Trust to be established. The third thing I did was log into Fidelity, where my IRA lives, and change the primary beneficiary from my daughter to that same trust. The contingent beneficiary I changed from my son-in-law to my granddaughter, with the condition that any inheritance be held in a custodial trust until she reaches the age of 30. The fourth thing I did was log into the state teachers retirement system portal. I have a small annuity from a few years I worked at a school district before going to the law firm, and change the survivor benefit designation. The fifth thing I did was print the existing power of attorney I had executed in 2018, which named my daughter as agent for finances and my son-in-law as successor. I read it twice. Then I took out my pen, and at the top of the first page I wrote, in my own handwriting, dated and signed, revoke it in full, new instrument to faux fallow. I scanned it. I emailed a copy to myself. I put the original in a folder marked Revocations and put the folder in the safe. The sixth thing I did was go into the 529 plan for my granddaughter. The 529 was, as I said, in my name with her as the beneficiary. My daughter had no legal access to it, but I had 2 years ago, in a moment of weakness, given my daughter the login credentials in case anything happens to you, Mom. I changed the password. I changed the security questions. I changed the email on file from the joint email I shared with my daughter, and yes, I had a joint email with her for family stuff, and yes, that was a mistake too, to a new Gmail address I created at 1 in the morning. I added two-factor authentication to my cell phone, which my daughter did not have administrative access to. The seventh thing I did was open a new document on Howard's computer, and I drafted, from memory, the bones of a new estate plan, a revocable living trust, with me as trustee during my lifetime and a corporate trustee, the trust company I had worked with for 20 years through the firm, as successor. The trust would hold the house, the IRA, the brokerage account, the life insurance proceeds, and the 529. The trust would distribute upon my death, in a specific way, a modest sum to my daughter, paid out over 10 years in monthly installments, with the forfeiture clause if she contested, the bulk to my granddaughter, in a subtrust she could not access until 30, with distributions for education, health, and a first home, a no contest clause, a clause requiring mediation in any family dispute, a statement of capacity to be signed by my physician and notarized within 30 days of execution. I went to bed at 2:10. I slept badly. I dreamed of the cold paper plate. In the morning, I called my doctor's office and got the first available appointment, which was the following Tuesday. I called my old colleague Marjorie, who is now a partner at the same firm I used to work at, and I left her a voicemail asking if she could meet me Monday morning for a paid consult. She called me back at 9:15 and said she would meet me Monday at 8, before her first client. I called the trust company. I called my financial advisor. I canceled the auto pay on a Comcast bill that I had been paying for my daughter's house. She had set it up on my card temporarily in 2022. I canceled the auto pay on the car insurance for my son-in-law's truck, which I had also, somehow, ended up paying. I had not known I was paying it. I had assumed, since the charge was modest, that it was my own auto policy. It was not. My auto policy was a separate line item. The truck insurance was $412 a month. By noon on Friday, I had canceled, revoked, removed, or rerouted every financial tendril that connected my accounts to my daughter's household. There were, I counted, 14 of them. 14. Some I had known about. Some I had known. The mortgage was not one of them. The mortgage on the Folsom house was in their name, not mine. I had only co-signed once, briefly, and they had refinanced 2 years ago and removed me. I had been grateful at the time. I was more grateful now. The mortgage was theirs. At 3 in the afternoon, my daughter called. I did not answer. She called again at 3:15. I did not answer. At 3:30, she texted, "Mom, my Capital One card just got declined at Target. Is everything okay?" I did not respond. At 4:10, she called the house phone. I did not answer. At 4:45, I got a text from my son-in-law, Henrietta. The auto insurance on the truck just got canceled effective tomorrow. Did you do that? Call us, please. I made myself a cup of tea. I sat in Howard's chair. I looked out the back window at the bird feeder I had not refilled in a week, and I made a note to refill it in the morning. At 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. It was my daughter. She was alone. She had been crying. I opened the door, but I did not unlatch the screen. "Mom, what is going on?" "The card got declined, the insurance. Travis says even the Comcast." "Mom, you can't just—" "I can," I said. I did. "Is this about Thanksgiving?" "Mom, I am so sorry about Thanksgiving. That came out so wrong. The lawyer thing was just an idea. We don't have to." "Honey," I said. The word felt strange coming back at her. I read the document. It was preliminary. It was not preliminary. It was a springing, durable POA with a $50,000 gift of principal clause. I have prepared, reviewed, or supervised the execution of approximately 4,000 of those documents in my career. It was not preliminary. It was a finished instrument waiting for a signature. She stood on my porch. Her mouth opened and closed. "Whose idea was it?" I said. "Yours or Travis's?" She didn't answer. "That's all right," I said. "You don't have to tell me. It doesn't matter." "Mom, please, can I come in?" "Please." I thought about it. I really did. I thought about the 11-year-old in her house who had whispered about the rolls. I thought about the fact that whatever I said next would be repeated, mangled, weaponized. "Not tonight," I said. "I'm tired. We can speak next week, when I've had a chance to meet with my attorney." "Your attorney." "Marjorie Halloran. You may remember her. She came to your high school graduation." She started to cry harder. "Mom, we never meant." "Sweetheart," I said, "I love you. I have loved you every day of your life. But I sat at a table tonight where you served me a cold plate and a piece of paper that would have hollowed out my life by the time I was 75, and you did it together and you did it on purpose. And the fact that you did not understand that is what I find hardest to forgive, not the paper, the not knowing." She said, "What about Maddie?" "That's my granddaughter. I'm going to give you her name because she deserves one. Maddie. Maddie is taken care of," I said. "Maddie is taken care of," I said. "Maddie has always been taken care of. Maddie will continue to be taken care of in ways you and I will discuss next week, with Marjorie present, with everything in writing." I closed the door. I did not slam it. I closed it, and I turned the deadbolt, and I walked back to Howard's chair, and I sat down, and I did, finally, cry. I cried for about 20 minutes. Then I got up and I refilled the bird feeder because I had told myself I would, and the chickadees would be there in the morning, and they deserved to be fed. The following Tuesday, I had a 4-hour appointment with Marjorie. We executed the new trust. We executed a new advanced healthcare directive, naming a friend from my book club as my agent, with Marjorie as successor. We executed a new durable power of attorney for finances, naming the same friend, with the trust company as successor. We had my primary care physician sign and notarize a capacity statement. We recorded the revocation of the prior POA with the county. We sent certified letters. Marjorie's office sent them on letterhead to every institution that had had a copy of the old POA on file, informing them that the prior instrument was revoked in full and that any attempt to act on it would be considered fraud and prosecuted. I am 67 years old. I am not in cognitive decline. I have an HbA1c of 5.8 and a resting heart rate of 62, and I do the New York Times crossword and pen 6 days a week. I am not confused about my property tax bill. The other thing I did, which I am the most proud of and the least proud of, in the way that those two things can sometimes be the same, I set up a separate trust for Maddie, funded with $200,000 out of the brokerage, irrevocable, not contestable, not reachable by either of her parents, distribute engines for education through age 22, then a graduated payout starting at 25. I named Marjorie as trustee. I have not told my daughter about this trust. I will not tell my daughter about this trust. I will not tell my daughter about this trust. Maddie will learn about it on her 18th birthday from a letter Marjorie will deliver. Maddie will also receive on that day a copy of a separate letter from me, which I have written and sealed and which Marjorie holds, explaining everything: the cold plate, the envelope, the can of cranberry sauce, the chair from the hall, explaining that I loved her mother, explaining that loving someone does not always mean handing them the keys. That was almost a year ago. Last Thanksgiving, I hosted dinner at my house in Roseville. I invited 2 neighbors, my friend from book club, Marjorie and her husband, and Maddie, whose mother, after a long, raw, painful conversation in February that I will not get into here, agreed to let her come for the day. I made the cranberry sauce from scratch. I made the rolls from scratch. The turkey was hot. The table was set for 9, with 9 chairs, and my chair was at the head because it was my table, and I had bought it in 1987 from a store in Stockton, and I had taken it back. Maddie sat to my right. She asked me, before Grace, if I could teach her to make the pie next year. I said yes. I said I would teach her everything. The cranberry sauce, the pie crust, the gravy, and every single thing I knew about reading a piece of paper that someone has slid across the table at you while pretending to smile. She is 12 now. She has time to learn. I have thought about that paper plate more times than I would like to admit, not because of the cold turkey on it, because of what it told me and how long I had refused to hear it. The truth is, my daughter did not become the woman who slid that envelope across the table on a single Thursday in November. She became her over years, and I helped. Every check I wrote when she cried on my couch was a small lesson, and the lesson was this: that love in our family would always show up as money, and that no was a word her mother did not actually mean. I taught her that. I cannot pretend otherwise. The $48,000 for the down payment, the $11,000 for the HVAC, the $9,000 for the missed mortgage, the truck insurance I did not even know I was paying. Each one of those was a sentence in a story I was telling her about who I would always be. By the time she sat down with that elder care attorney, she was not betraying me. She was finishing the book I had been reading aloud to her for 35 years. That is the part about cause and effect that nobody wants to look at. The seed is planted long before the harvest, and the harvest is not punishment. It is arithmetic. What I learned at 67, sitting on a needlepoint chair from my hallway with a cold plate balanced on my knees, is that a person can be good and still be a fool, and that those two things are not opposites, but neighbors. Goodness without wisdom is a wallet left open on a park bench. It does not matter how kind you were in setting it down, the wallet will be taken. I had been good. I had not been wise. The wisdom came later, and it came hard, the way the best lessons do. I think now about what I want Maddie to understand when she reads my letter at 18. I want her to know that her grandmother loved her mother and also told her mother no, and that these two things lived in the same body without contradicting each other. I want her to know that honoring the people who raised you does not require you to fund every choice they make, and that being loved by someone does not entitle you to their pension. Most of all, I want her to know that the courage to revoke is its own kind of love. Not the soft kind, the harder kind. The kind that says, I will not let you become a person you cannot live with by handing you everything until you forget how to ask. There was a moment, around 1 in the morning that Thursday night, when I almost stopped. The mouse hovered over the button. I thought, she's my only child. I thought, what kind of mother does this? And then I thought of Maddie whispering about the roles, and I clicked. The strength I needed was not in my arm. It was in my refusal to keep paying for a story I no longer believed in. I am still my daughter's mother. I always will be. But I am also, finally, my own.